me bring in Dr. Zuhdi Jasser. He's a practicing physician, and he's also president of the American Forum for Democracy. Robert Spencer of Jihad Watch. Michael Scheuer, former CIA counterintelligence analyst and author of the new book, Osama bin Laden. Mr. Scheuer, let me go to you first. You saw Dominic and Natalie tell us there's clash. They're fighting in the streets still. It's midnight there. You see the flames, the fire. It looks like some of the pro-government supporters were jumping ship, and then he said maybe they weren't. They were actually jumping back. So it feels like this is going to go on for a while. Am I right, sir?
Oh, I think you are right. I think, and we have managed to squander, the White House has squandered whatever prestige we had because they've come down on both sides of the table. They've said things that are very supportive of the protesters, but once the protesters start to get killed and shot, they'll realize that the American cavalry is not coming. And at the same time, if Mubarak survives, he's going to be much less anxious to help us do anything. I think the wisdom of the situation here was to keep Mr. Obama's big mouth shut, along with Mrs. Clinton's, because in reality, we have virtually no power to affect things in Egypt.
Go ahead, Mr. Jasser. What do you think of that? You heard Mr. Scheuer say that, boy, it's going to be tenuous. What's your take?
Well, I'll tell you, I think he's right in that we don't know which way it's going to go, but these protesters are not going to go back. I mean, I wish my father and grandfather were alive to see what's happening as they escaped Syria to come to American freedom in the 60s. And these countries ruled by an iron fist. They oppress and destroy and completely abuse their people. And if these riots stop, what's going to happen is over the next 8 months, Mubarak's people and his thugs would start to clean out the people that started this riot, that started the revolt. So we need to start supporting those that are about democracy. And yes, Islamists may come.
Who is that? I mean, these are all great talking points, and frankly, we do a lot of this on the network, but we want to know who, if it's not al-Baradei, if it's Hosni Mubarak leaving, who's going to go and fill that void?
Well, you know, I'll tell you, I think we don't know. The bottom line is that the reason the Brotherhood exists is because they're another type of fascist that have been able to exist under this type of rule. We have this illusion that somehow things have been stable, but the Brotherhood has spread and metastasized into hundreds of thousands of different groups around the world because of secular fascism in the Middle East. And the freedom initiative that the Bush administration initiated in Iraq and around the Middle East is now coming to fruition. And we need a laboratory to begin to have a war of ideas to where the ideas of Western democracy can start to infiltrate.
It takes a lot of time, a lot of patience. Let me take Mr. Spencer in the middle there, sir. Go ahead. Who should fill the void? If Hosni Mubarak leaves, walks away, takes his money and runs, so to speak, what are we left with there? I mean, we are pro-democracy. We want to see democracy, but, boy, it just can't be anybody.
Yeah, it would be great, Eric, if there were some sort of democratic force there. That would be wonderful. But actually, there are no heroes in this story. The Muslim Brotherhood is poised to take power. They're the leading opposition group. And they are a group, let's remember, is inveterately hostile to the United States as well as to Israel. They're an international organization as well as an Egyptian one that is dedicated in its own words, according to a captured internal document, dedicated in the United States to eliminating and destroying Western civilization from within and sabotaging its miserable house. And so this is the group that Obama has green-lighted now to take part in a post-Mubarak regime in Egypt. He's kidding himself and kidding us if he expects us to believe that this is going to be some sort of democratic rule.
Mr.
This
Scheuer,
is going to be another Islamic state like Iran.
Sir. Here's the question. If it's not al-Baradei, whoever it may be, won't the Muslim Brotherhood have just as much influence on whoever that would be?
The Brotherhood must have an influence, yes, because there's only two entities in Egypt that can govern the country, either Mubarak or, because of the nature of the the Muslim Brotherhood and its quasi-government activities, whether it's providing health care, education, legal assistance, food, prenatal care. It has a tremendous ability to install a substitute infrastructure into the government. And I think, but no matter who comes to power, the Brotherhood has to be part of it, or Egypt can't be governed.
Before you jump in, Mr. Jasser, here's the question. We saw it, Tunisia. This is where this started. There was rioting in Tunisia. It spilled over into Egypt. And now we've heard, as recently as yesterday, Jordan may have a president that steps down. And then even today, Yemen may have a president that steps away. Also, boy, it feels like there's some sort of I don't know, radical Islam creep that's going on where the people who we've known, the enemy we know, have been in power as they're being pushed out. very scary situation going on in the Middle East.
Well, you know, listen, Eric, I know where you're coming from. I've devoted my life to fighting political Islam and the ideology of theocracy, but this change has to happen. Radical Islam is a product of this autocratic environment in the Middle East. And if it's going to change, it's going to have to start somewhere. And it really, you know, I get concerned when I hear my friends of freedom start to somehow say that, well, the dictators are better. The Egyptian people are no different than us as Americans. They don't want anything different. And if you look at, I think it's misleading to think that the Brotherhood's leading this. If they could have done these demonstrations, they would have done them 2 or 3 years ago when they were 20% of the parliament.
Why is that misleading?
Now,
Mr. Spencer, do you agree that it's misleading that the Brotherhood is involved in these demonstrations?
No, I don't. I think it's the Brotherhood doesn't have to lead it because the Brotherhood is the group that's poised to exploit it. And so they are actually holding back and laying low in these demonstrations, but they are still the group that's in the driver's seat for any government that's going to succeed Mubarak. The problem here is that, you know, I understand Dr. Jasser saying it's terrible that we have to say the dictators were better. But look, you want democracy in Egypt? Fine. The Brotherhood will win any election that's free in Egypt, and then you're going to have an Islamic state there
Dr. Jasser,
that is more hostile to the United States than
so the Arabs are
see.
Sentenced? I know, but Robert, are they sentenced then to being under the thumbs of a dictatorship?
No, but
where
here's
they
the
go
question.
And wipe out towns and kill
Dr.
citizens?
Jasser, hold on, Mr. Spencer, hang on. Dr. Jasser, do the young people who are protesting in the street, they're throwing Molotov cocktails, do they understand the ramifications of replacing Hosni Mubarak with someone who may have massive ties or influence by a Muslim Brotherhood? Do they know what that means? Do they know what that means to the United States, the democracy they so want to copy?
Eric, that's a great question. I have one answer for you. Saddam Hussein. We have devoted so much resources to changing Iraq, and it's going to take generations. The process in Egypt can be done without our military doing it, but it's going to take time. And this transition, we have to stop looking at just the short term and look at the long-term strategy for our own security, for global security. It's not going to happen overnight. It may get worse before it gets better, but it has to start somewhere, and these thugs in the Middle East have to go.
Mr. Scheuer, how do I put this nicely? Would it be terrible if the Obama administration or Mr. Obama came out and said, hey, guys, look, Mubarak, stay in power until September. You can leave in September. We're backing you through September. Would that be a bad idea?
Well, certainly, I think that's what he's going to do anyway, no matter what Mr. Obama says. But we have a real problem here because the security of Israel depends on Arab tyranny. If Mubarak goes, if King Abdullah in Jordan goes, if Bashir al-Assad goes, whatever governments replace them will be not as effective and certainly not as pro or at least neutral toward Israel. So American policy.
Isn't this what this?
Past...
Hey guys, all three of you. Let me, if I can get the shot of all three of you in the monitor. Show. Don't speak. Just give me a yes or a no. Isn't really what this is all about? Israel, the United States' relationship with Israel and the Mideast. Just give me a head shake, yes or no. Anyone agree? Anyone disagree with that?
Much of it is.
Much of it is. Okay, go ahead, Mr. Jasser.
Well, it's part of the answer, but at the end of the day, Israel's security, and we need to stand by our friend Israel, but Israel's security is going to be dependent upon being surrounded by democracies, surrounded by peaceful nations whose children want to be educated.
But you're not going to get
this kind of democracy with the Muslim Brotherhood backing this guy?
Process but this is a maturational process of a people that have been oppressed for 2 generations.
Mr. Spencer, what about this kind of democracy, sir?
The oppressed people in Egypt are holding, the oppressed people in Egypt who want democracy, according to Dr. Jasser, are holding up signs with Mubarak with the Star of David printed on his forehead and saying on Man of the Street interviews, we hate Mubarak because he maintains peace with Israel. So
well, Mubarak is the one that fed the protocols of the elders of Zion every year.
One at a time, guys. Go ahead, Mr. Jasser.
Mubarak is the one that has fed movies like the Protocols every year during Ramadan in order to brainwash and to facilitate this type of antagonism. The more we think that the Brotherhood takes over, the more he can legitimately say that, well, I have to do this in order to keep my Brotherhood people at bay. And I think you'll find
that's why I said
that
hold on, guys, gentlemen. Mr. Scheuer, is an Obama backing of a Mubarak government a sign to the people of Egypt or maybe even the people of the Middle East that we're still firmly implanted on the side of Israel?
Oh, sure it is, sir. Yeah, Israel is such an enormous detriment to the United States, our relationship with the Israelis, that it's going to become clear to Americans that this is just going to cost us blood and lives the longer we pursue this relationship with the Israelis.
Mr. Spencer, you're laughing. You disagree?
Well, I think that's appallingly a terrible thing for Mr. Scheuer to have said. Israel is the only real democracy. You know, Mr. Jasser wants democracy. Israel's the only democracy in the Middle East. It's the only stable government. It's the only one that protects human rights. And Mr. Scheuer wants us to throw it under the bus for a bunch of people who are going to institute a system of Islamic law that institutionalizes discrimination against non-Muslims and women, extinguishes the freedom of speech and the freedom of conscience, and is inveterately hostile to Israel to a genocidal degree.
Mr. Jasser, go ahead, sir. Go ahead. Here's my question, guys, hold on. Mr. Scheuer, hold on. Mr. Jasser, democracy at any cost. It doesn't matter who they put in as long as they put someone in because they want it, because they're lighting fires in the street. Is that what you're saying?
No, Eric. Change does not happen easily. These guys are not going to leave. The population has not been educated to the point of understanding Jeffersonian principles. If we're going to help them, we need to start building institutions, to being on the ground, not just abandoning them.
All due respect,
well,
we don't have time.
That's
there are people in the streets who may be dying right now. Do we have time to go through the whole process?
But Eric,
do we or not?
That's the issue, is the American ADD problem, where we only pay attention for 2 weeks and then we abandon them. That has to change. The long-term stability is what we need to look at, and I think that's what will be in Israel's interest and America's interest and everybody's.
Great discussion. We'll be on it. I'm sure there's going to be a lot more. Mr. Jasser, Mr. Spencer, and Mr. Scheuer. Appreciate your time, fellas.